Welcome to Champion Stepdad Podcast. We are exploring the unique role of stepdads and how to apply performance psychology skills to become better father figures and role models. My name is Neil Wattier. I'm a stepdad. I'm also a resilience trainer and a performance consultant, encouraging you to join the Champion Stepdad Facebook group and grow your band of brothers. Today's episode, I am speaking with Gramps Jeffrey. He's the author of I Don't Want to Turn 3, a book from a child's perspective, which can help parents understand what and when the child comprehends family interaction with concepts like sharing and the difference between me and us. The first half of the episode focused on Gramps Jeffrey and his experience as a grandfather and an author. Now, this is his pen name. In the second half of the episode, we move into a discussion with Marc Joseph, his real name, and we discuss his experience as a business professional and a business author. I hope you enjoy this episode with Gramps Jeffrey. Today, I'm here with Gramps Jeffrey. I really appreciate you being on the podcast with me. How are you doing today?
Great. I appreciate you inviting me. It should be fun.
Yeah, you bet. You know, the thing that caught my attention and that brought us together was you're the author of a book called I Don't Want to Turn 3. So tell us about your book and how you came up with this idea.
Well, living this past year in the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 isolation, and except for being able to be with my family, it gave me a special time to really watch and interact with all my grandkids. And I got to tell you, what a trick. I've got 6 grandkids, and they have completely different personalities. But the one thing they do have in common is their curiosity and how excited they get when they do accomplish something. Watching them grow up year to year and how they interact with each other really is the basis for this book.
Nice. And you have 4 children, 6 grandchildren. You currently live in Phoenix. Is your family here to interact with frequently, or is that something that you have to do from a distance?
Well, we got to do it both ways. So I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. I have 2 of my grandkids live in Austin, Texas, and 2 live in Orlando, Florida. So luckily, during the holiday we just had, 2 from Austin were here. So I had 4 of them running around the house. And so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's very remote. And that brings up a interesting question: is how do grandparents stay in touch with those that are so far removed? When I was growing up, my uncle lived up the street, my grandmother lived around the corner. It was a chance to grow up and be with family. But in today's world, with the separation, how do you really, keep in touch?
Yeah, and that's something that I experienced a lot. Being in the military and traveling, being stationed all over the U.S., all over the world, but then also going on deployments that, sometimes were short notice, sometimes were, extended separations. And I have noticed over the years, it has gotten, I wouldn't say easier. It's become more convenient to stay in touch through, as long as you got a good signal, there's all kinds of ways to make that happen. But as I said, that doesn't necessarily make separation easier. Sometimes it just kind of minimizes the unknowns, but it still can be pretty complicated. So, we definitely don't want to minimize that. And especially as, kids are growing up, I've got, most of my family is back in Omaha. And so I've got nieces and nephews that don't really know their Uncle Neil. And just the thought of that it kind of sucks. We'll just say it's tough sometimes. So, just making sure that we understand that, it's not just us, what's it like for them?
Yeah, I'll give you a tip of what I'm doing. And I'm sure your listeners can have all kinds of different ways that they do it. But for some reason, children that are 2 and 3 and 4 years old, they love dinosaurs. I can't tell you why. I don't know if you've got any nieces and nephews or anybody listening has, but every single kid, 2, 3, and 4, relates to dinosaurs. I mean, my kids, they can tell me the names of these dinosaurs. They can tell me if they eat meat, if they eat vegetarian. As far as I'm concerned, they're small, medium, and large, these dinosaurs. They can really get into details. So knowing that, and knowing that I had 2 of my kids, the grandkids in Orlando and 2 in Austin, we came up with this little game that we played. And every night we have half a dozen dinosaurs, and every night we would put them in a different room in the house. So for instance, we had the dinosaurs in the refrigerator eating blueberries. We had the dinosaurs at the washing dishes with the grandma with soap on their noses. We had the dinosaurs playing the piano. We had dinosaurs walking up the steps, and so on and so forth. And so we developed these 50 different nights that the dinosaurs were someplace different in our house. And so what happened, because these kids had this desire to know about the dinosaurs, we started getting calls every single night from Orlando and from Austin. So, they would call my wife's iPhone because of the FaceTime, and they would immediately say, "Where's Gramps? Where's Gramps? We need to find out where the dinosaurs are." And so in that kind of a way, it gave us a chance to connect to them. This all happened during the year of COVID. It gave us a chance to connect to them and to have a way to get together. So I definitely would recommend for any of your listeners, for even nieces and so on, because again, you'll find that you do most of the reaching out with little kids. They don't think about calling you, but if you come up with a way to have them think about you, and every night before they went to bed, they called us to find out where the dinosaurs were. So that's just a tip if anybody wants to do something, a little different to keep in touch with relatives all around the country or the world.
Yeah, that's cute. I really like that. And I think it shows the number one, we have to have expectation management, right? And I've got, 3 kids that are in their 20s. And even then I have to understand that I'm going to do most of the reaching out if I want to have that relationship with them. It's, when I was 20, I didn't reach out to my parents a whole lot, but also with, the younger kids, like you said, you might just have to be creative. And that's a really great example of being creative, using some, your imagination to connect with their imagination. And I'm sure there's people out there that can come up with any number of ways that they could do that. But that's a great idea and a great example of how to make that happen. So your book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, is from the, you can tell from the title, is written from child's perspective. And, it's basic illustrations, basic text that I would assume that this is something that you would read with a child to kind of help them work through their anxiety or their unsurety of growth and, that next birthday.
Yeah. What goes through a toddler's mind, the parents are just so desperate to understand, when does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? And this kind of book explores that and how a family finds out together. So yes, it's a good way to teach them. As a baby boomer myself, trying to understand the world and how it's evolved since I was 3 years old, is also part of this whole story. My parents, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. In fact, I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel." So
Change
the channel. So, my parents' definition of discipline is quite different than the parents of today. Has today's world made for a better place for children to grow up in? I'll kind of let your listeners kind of weigh in on that. And, and how we're treating our kids today. Is it better? Is with all this technology and so forth? Is it better than when we were kids? What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation to have, because, I think about being a kid and, not being connected. And our idea was, being raised in the go outside and play generation was, hey, be home by this time or when the streetlights come on. And what you did was, as long as you didn't get hurt, or get in trouble. And sometimes it was just a matter of, being out and exploring and being adventurous. And I actually was having a conversation with my wife, Cindy, over this weekend, as we, drove on a, 4-day vacation just to relax and get out of town, was, what do I want to do? And I keep going back to that same thing. I feel like it's, the same thing when I was a kid. I just want to go explore my world, whether that be camping or 4-wheeling or, getting on a plane and going to Italy or Europe or somewhere far away. It's still just that sense of adventure. And that comes from the experiences that I had as a kid that I made, I don't want to see it. And again, the kids today, Cindy's boys, it's not that they're better or worse, right, off. It's just different. And how do you make use of the opportunities that you have? So, interesting perspective. You just got to be aware, I think.
Yeah, the real message of this book is at what age do you begin to take responsibility for your actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? My contemporaries, it may not be till 63 that they take responsibility for the actions. So, that's why that's part of the message of this book is, when do you really say I'm responsible?
Yeah, and we actually got into a conversation, me and a couple of people talking about at what age are certain chores appropriate. Some people were talking about, lawnmowers and weed eaters. Other people were talking about laundry and dishes. And, at what age is it appropriate to get kids involved in certain things, whether that be recreation or responsibilities and chores? And, how do you hold them accountable for certain things? And, that's there's going to be as many examples of opinions as there are people involved in the conversation. I default to, as soon as they're ready to do the dishes, they should be doing the dishes, even if they don't do them great, as long as they're involved in doing them.
It's interesting you said that, because I experienced that this weekend. My wife loves to cook. And so her mission was to get these 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds involved in cooking for getting ready for the holiday. So they all had their little, cooking outfits on, and they all learned how to stir and all that. So you're right. It's up to us to start to teach them as early as we can to get involved with things, and then let them do it. And you're right. She had them doing the dishes too. So that's a message we all should carry forward to our families.
Yeah. From responsibility to opportunities to learn, because now when the kids are done, they just know that whoever cooked is not responsible for dishes. And unless there's some other plan, like, the kids are responsible for dishes. And now that's just the common knowledge around here. And it's not a fight. It's not an argument. It's just, they just go and they do it. And that's just how things are. And, cooking is a great example. And, at what point do you let them around hot stoves and hot irons? Like waffle irons, use of knives, like that all comes down to the sooner you expose them to them, and the sooner that you think that they're able to use them. I think they should be using them with supervision, to the point then they become comfortable. They are respectful of a sharp edge. Why not? Who says that they got to be 10 years old before they use a knife? So there's a lot of opportunity there for them to learn. No different than, when is it okay for my child to hop on their bike and just ride around the neighborhood without supervision? Depends on your neighborhood, depends on you and your tolerances and your child's respect for their environment. If you've taught them to respect their environment, they're probably going to be better off in their environment alone.
And that's what's interesting about books, because there's books on every single subject. There's books for little kids. There's my book, but there's 100 other great books to read to 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds. Like, for instance, I saw it this weekend. My 9-year-old, my granddaughter, just turned 9 years old. So she grabbed a copy of my book, and she took 3 of the little kids, and they went underneath my desk for some reason to read this book. And they didn't see me standing there watching them. And she was reading the book and questioning them, and and they were saying, Levi says, "Hey, that's me in the bathtub," because the book is based on true story and all really true pictures. And Jackson said, "Hey, that's me playing with my dinosaurs." And it was just great to see the older child reading to the others, and them sitting there and listening. And that really brings up the reason why I wrote this book for parents and really grandparents, because grandparents have got to stay in touch. They have got to be able to stay with the kids and teach them things. So, I wrote this book, and the reason that grandparents really should be reading as much as they can, whether it's my book or other books, to their children, because it's a special time. Going back to, we only have 18 years when these kids are born till they go away, till you really have a chance to really impact what they're doing. So reading to kids creates all kinds of experiences for them. For instance, it's a way for you to bond with a child. It's a nice way to kind of spend time together, reading together, and the child feels secure, and it gives you a chance to spend time with them. It supports all the listening skills that you need as you're growing up. Reading a book requires them to listen to what it is. And you and I both know that when we reach our ages, if you take a look at all the skills we've learned, listening is the number one skill. We've got to be able to listen before we can react. The development of cognitive and language development, those kinds of things where they are learning and asking about words, and then the attention span gives them a chance to sit down with you for a while, 10, 15 minutes, and create attention span. So, all these things that we're kind of talking about is learning, and when do they learn, when do you give them responsibility? It all starts with, how do you handle them in reading books when they're young?
And I will definitely second that. When my 26-year-old was young, he was just getting to that age where he would read a little bit, I would read a little bit, and he was kind of moving from the, little kid books. We would Harry Potter was becoming big, and so he became interested in that because his friends were interested in it, and that's what I used to teach him, because I've been involved. I really, from when I was a kid, adventure, things like The Hobbit, and those are the kind of stories that I was raised on. My brother would read to me, or somebody else would read. And just the idea of that, really, excuse me, it's a word I'm looking for, just a very creative, right? Using your imagination type thing. It's, not your typical book. It's not historical based. It's some world that somebody created. And so I introduced him to it, and we would read, and it became a long-term bond. Even until now, they're still really big Harry Potter fans. I became a really big Harry Potter fan. And now it's even, that they're in their 20s, it's still something that we share. So I would definitely second that and encourage people that if you're doing it, keep it up. If you're not doing it, I highly encourage you to read and, create that bond, but also, the listening skills and the engagement, and, the opportunity to use your voice, because I've heard dads are, typically, if we can categorize, dads are typically really good at reading books and putting in the voices and making the characters come to life. And that's just something fun for the kids. And then it gives you something to bond over.
Well, to kind of take beyond what you're saying, which is great points, is, before you even sit down, you pick up, first of all, always have the kid pick the book. Let them, you got books out there, let them be the one, because that way they get engaged with it. Before you even sit down and read them, you should ask your child, what do you think is going to happen in this book? Okay, that starts the thought process. What's going to happen in this book? And then, while you're reading to them, who are the characters in this book? And, obviously explain what characters are to them, but who are the people in this book? Where is it being set? So they continue to think through of what it is. And then as you're reading through it, does anything in this book sound familiar to you? Have you done anything like this? So get them engaged, ask them questions besides the words that are on the page. And then when the book's all over, what was the favorite part of the book? And why was the most favorite part of the book? I think it's important for fathers it's necessary for fathers to teach children how to think, not exactly what they have to think, but how to think. And if you can teach them as a father, using characters as examples, or using Harry Potter like you did, how to think, when they get in their 20s and 30s, it's just going to help that whole process. So you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, in a mix of, I don't say that anything is bad or they shouldn't be doing anything. We recently had some my friends on here that are video gamers, and that's how some of the things they connect, but also how the dad tends to relax and unwind. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that there's something different about reading books or playing role-playing games, or something where it's just all you have is this book and words, and you have to create the mental image of everything that's going on, because you have nothing to reference other than your imagination. And I think that you're right. Not only does it build imagination, but it builds those critical thinking skills, which down the road, the earlier that you teach kids, and this is actually something that I'm working on for my master's degree thesis, still working out the details of exactly what it's going to mean. But essentially, the sooner in life you can teach, in my case, it's mental performance skills, but the sooner you can teach skills and thought and mental toughness and those things that are developmentally appropriate, no different than teaching a child to use a knife in the kitchen. The sooner you can do that, the better off they're going to be, because it's going to become an ingrained skill, right? It's going to be part of that default mechanism. We always talk about the survival skills and, how, emotional triggers can be good or bad, right? Sense danger or overreact to something silly. The sooner we can teach these things, the better off they're going to be, because they can practice it and now becomes part of their default mechanism, rather than, at 47 years old, I'm still trying to learn some of this stuff and overcoming some really dramatic habits that I've been practicing for 47 years. So I think that those are all great points and great opportunities to not only engage and build a relationship, but we're talking about some pretty significant skills and characteristics of the child that I didn't even think of when this conversation first started, because a lot of the work I do is maybe high school level and above, but now you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, which shouldn't be a surprise to me. Cindy's got a 7 and a 9-year-old, and I work with them on this stuff all the time.
What you're really saying is, to raise a complete child, it takes a village. Right? It's not one person that can do it. We'd like to think mom and dad can do it, but it really takes uncles and aunts and friends and so forth, and grandparents. And since I'm a grandfather, I want to talk to the grandfathers in your audiences right now, because we're the generation above you, that raised you so that you could raise great kids today. And so, there's too many of the grandparents that I see that just don't want to get involved in their kids' lives. And that is wrong. We need to be involved dramatically into all of our kids' lives. You got to remember, they're only going to be young once. And for that matter, so will I, or so will the other grandparents. We only have a limited amount of time that we can get involved to help with these kids. The future is unpredictable. So we got to take a step today. I mean, we could be here today and gone tomorrow. And we've got so much knowledge that we need to embed on all these other generations, that we as grandfathers have got to do that. And so we've got to become part of the routine. If you live in town, that's great. See them once a week or once every couple of weeks. If you live out of town, do something like we talked about earlier, make a call for them. Because you can be an influence on these kids. You can teach them things that their mom and dad can't teach them. And again, don't be afraid to call them, because again, they're not going to call you. You need to call them. So I just urge any of the older men in your audience that are listening is, think back. Think about when you were a kid. If you had more people involved in teaching you, could you be a little bit better?
Yeah. And that's something that I've touched on numerous times, that growing up, I didn't have a lot of strong, I didn't have a lot of multiple father figures that I look back on and I was really super proud of. My dad is a great person. He was just very busy, right? I know that we were, not really knowing at the time, but I look back on it, my mom and dad struggled a lot, and my dad was busy trying to feed us. My mom was trying to go to school and then get jobs, and they worked their asses off. What that meant was they didn't have a lot of time for us. Luckily, I was, raised in a small town where it was relatively safe, and I had that capability to go outside and play. And, but I look back on it, and, other than my dad teaching me, really good hands-on skills, craftsmanship type stuff, from teachers and coaches, even early in my military career, I don't remember a very strong pull to any single person that I feel was a strong mentor or father figure for me. And it was really unfortunate. I definitely remember people that had good impacts on me, and I don't want to minimize that. But I think it's your point is well taken, that if you see the opportunity, take it. And, that's no different than whether you're talking about your kids or you have the opportunity to coach or Cub Scouts or, whatever volunteer stuff or engagement that you have the capability to do it. because the more that you are engaged as a mentor and a father figure, the bigger impact that you're going to make on your community. And there's kids out there that are looking for it, and it might even be the one that's you're turned off to the most, the one that's acting up. Maybe they're the ones that need it the most. So where is the opportunity? Where are your strong skills to engage your communities?
See, I think this current generation of kids is the smartest our environment has ever produced. I just think they are so much smarter than my generation. I think they're smarter than your generation. And so I think that electronic stuff that we're feeding them is great. They have a chance now, where they may not have the attention of parents. They've got the internet. As long as we direct them in the right way, they've got, they can do all kinds. I mean, my kids, they play these games that I have no understanding of all. I've got my 6-year-old grandchild Levi is, into this game. Have you heard of mine? He just day and he lives it. But it helped him get closer with his father, because every night when his father comes home from work, they play together. And it's the internet. Yeah, they're playing the game, but it helps bring them together. So I think what we have to do is take a combination of making sure they go outside and play like we did as little kids. Take in the hour or two of the what they can learn from the internet, or as you can just say, ask a question to one of your, and you can question back on any of the sources that you've got. Say, Alexa, what's this? And they'll tell you exactly all you need to know. So I think we need to combine what we did as a kid, let them have a little bit of electronics to help them stimulate them and to ask more questions. And I'm telling you, this generation coming up is going to outshine all of us.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how can we help them, and I I heard a interesting statement the other day of your kids don't need you to tell them what to do and what to think. And I think you even just said that a little bit ago. They don't need you to tell them what to think. They need you to help them so that they can learn to think for themselves. So it's we got to be careful. Like I don't want to raise these two children, Cindy's boys, to be something in particular. I want to provide them opportunities. I want to help coach them to be confident and to have skills so that they can go out there and do it themselves. If Jackson and his little gang of neighborhood boys that come over and they all have their bicycles running around looking like Sandlot movie, I just know that, hey, they're running around the neighborhood, and I trust that they respect this as their neighborhood that they're going to live in and grow up in, that they're going to make good choices. They're going to have experiences, both, good and bad, productive, counterproductive, whatever, however you want to look at it, but to go have experiences so that they can put the skills into practice. And I got to open the door and let them go. Somebody put it really well. For somebody was actually struggling talking about their child growing up and not wanting to be around the parent very much. Somebody else had made the analogy that parenting is like being the edge of a pool. You want your kids to jump in the pool and have fun. And if they get scared, if they get nervous, they get tired, they know that they can always come to the edge of the pool and hold on for a minute, maybe even get out of the pool for a little bit. But eventually the point of the pool is to jump in the deep end and have fun. And it just kind of clicked. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's just providing that safe space and being the strong pillar that's always going to be there, so that when they get nervous or they get tired or they need some help of some kind, I'm there. Otherwise, I just got to let them go.
Well, if you can sleep at night knowing that you have taught them the right morals, the right way from, right from wrong. I guess the real moral is when you love, you will teach others how to love. So, when you believe in something in the right way and teach your kids to do that, then they will learn the right from wrong, and let them run, let them go for it, because that's part of growing up. When you're growing up, not everything is success. I mean, you many times learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. So you're absolutely right. Let's set the groundwork, teach them what is right and wrong, and then let them make up their own minds.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I introduced you under the name that you gave me, which now we're going to talk about that's actually your pen name. And it's not your first book that you wrote. And, before that, I think you said this was your first children's book, but you've written other things before. So let's let the cat out of the bag and tell people who you really are.
Well, my real name is Marc Joseph, and the first book I wrote was The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. So, that's what this book is The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. Okay, and it's I wrote this book because I developed a company that became the largest business-to-business site on the internet, where we sold case quantity to small businesses all around the world. And our customers were moms and pops who were surviving and thriving against the chains. So I was getting calls all the time on, how do you do this? What do you do there? So I wrote this book. It's a 15 chapter book, a step-by-step guide of how to open a business and how to compete. So it's got a chapter on hiring people, a chapter on finding products, another chapter on location and things like that. So that really is, I spent most of my life writing, helping small businesses survive and thrive against the chains. So that's my first book. And then, you talk about my other book, which is my children's book. I don't want to turn 3. So, can I read you a page from the children's book?
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear a little bit of it.
Okay. So again, this book is based on a true story of my 6 grandkids. All the pictures are based on pictures that I have taken. I sent it to a artist who went ahead and made it into more of a cartoony kind of field. But the premise of the book is Jordan, who is 2, is turning 3. And he has a problem where he takes things from everybody. Now, anybody who has 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, this affects every family. This is around the world. There's always, when you have 2 or 3 kids, they are always taken from each other. So here's one page from the book. Then all of a sudden, Olivia screams, "What are my dancing shoes doing in Jordan's room?" The entire family runs to my private bedroom, and Jackson yells, "My dinosaurs!" And Levi shrieks, "My sea creatures!" And Baker bawls, "Truck!" And Grace cries, "My dolls!" And Mommy looks at me like today will be my last day alive. Kind of gives you a feel for what's going to go on in the book.
Yeah, I had a chance to look through. You sent me an ebook copy, and I had a chance to go through it. And because even my youngest stepson is 7 years old, so this isn't necessarily that we're going to sit down and read with him, but looking through it, for somebody with children that age, or babies that eventually going to be that age, it's just a good way to talk about basically universal rules that around the world, kids are kids, and they're not bad. They're just curious about their world. A lot of times they're really selfish, and it's not something you need to change about them. You just need to have conversations like we talked about, engage. And, the book provides good lessons and ways to engage a young child, that it doesn't always have to be discipline. I've had many conversations about this, that there's a difference between discipline and punishment. And if somebody does something wrong, yes, there's a time and a place for punishment. But really the idea behind discipline is, how do you teach? And if you engage punishment, you're missing the opportunity to really teach what's the lesson that you want to teach. And so default to teaching before punishment as much as possible.
You're right. We are the guides. We need to guide these kids. We're talking about punishment. I don't know how it was when you were growing up. And you got to figure that I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and all the greatest generation. I mean, my parents were the greatest generation. I mean, they made World War II come to an end. They built this country like it was never built before. So they were the world great, but they had different ideas of discipline. I mean, my dad had a belt. And, if my brother and I didn't do the right thing, my mother said, "Wait till your dad gets home." And I can tell you many times he was chasing us around the dining room table with his belt, saying, "This is how you do it." He had a fraternity paddle that he had, and he used the paddle too. So one night when they were out, it was late fall, and we lived up in Ohio. There was lots of leaves on the ground. We took his paddle and we buried it underneath the leaves. And then the next day it snowed. And then when spring came around, the paddle had disappeared. To me, it was a miracle. This was, the paddle is gone. And so that's how they did it in my generation. Now, in the most recent generation, my daughters, who hopefully have learned from us as we kind of taught them how to do these things, they time out is the way to handle their kids. A little 2, 3, 4-year-old, if they don't do, they know they're going in the corner there with their timeout. They don't do what my dad did to me. Whether it was right or wrong, who knows? But so discipline is, you're right, how we handle discipline, and that's an improvement over the generations. It's talking through and having the kids understand about discipline is just so much better today.
So you have the 2 books. You have one that's from a perspective of a grandpa for talking about young children and engagement and communication and those things, and then you have the other book that is business and high level business and large business related. There's a lot of lessons from both of those from 2 completely different perspectives. Was something that somebody told me fairly recently, now that I'm getting to the end of my master's degree. And after that, I can take a breath and I can look forward to doing some things that I've been putting off because of school's been such a high priority. Somebody once told me when I pushed back on the idea of writing a book, right? Writing a book does not excite me. I know I have a lot of information to give, but I just don't enjoy sitting down and banging out, page after page on the computer. And he looked at me and he said, if you have information in your head that is beneficial to other people, that other people can benefit from the information in your head, you are obligated to write that book. And I was like, oh man. So, he called me out, but he knew that was the way to approach because of my personality, because of our friendship, our relationship that we've built. That's not something he would say to everybody, but it's something he said to me that had a major impact. What was your, you talked about the reasons talk about the emotion behind writing the 2 style of books.
Well, when I was a junior in college, I did 11-week backpack through Europe. We rode the trains, we stayed at youth hostels and all that, but I kept a journal. So every day I would write down exactly the people we met and what we did and all that. And then, I put the journal away. And about 10 years later, I pulled it out. I said, wow, this is pretty good. I said, maybe I should think about doing some writing. So what happened after I wrote my first book, about the secrets of retailing, how to beat Walmart, Arianna Huffington had read my book. She is the founder of the Huffington Post. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And so she asked me to become a contributor. So I've written over 100 articles now for the Huffington Post, but most of them have been about the nonprofit world, about the homeless and about the elderly and schools and the government. And the reason that I was so involved in that is what happened with our business at dollardays.com in 2006. Katrina hit down in 5 and 6 Louisiana and Mississippi. And because we were so dominant on the internet, we had thousands and thousands of keywords and phrases that were ranked 1, 2, and 3, that all of a sudden we were getting orders from churches and schools to help the people in Louisiana. They were buying underwear and socks and toothpaste and toothbrushes. And then once they opened up the trailers, they're buying all the kitchen goods and the bathroom goods and the bedroom goods and all that. And so it opened up a whole world to me that, hey, there's an underserved market here in the nonprofit world that could use what we're doing through the internet to help more people. So I became very involved in the nonprofit world. I mean, half the business now comes from nonprofit organizations, National Contract with Salvation Army, the Gospel Rescue Mission, all the Kiwanis clubs, the 4,000 Kiwanis clubs. The back end is the products that they have. So, that opened up my mind that, as a writer, you can really communicate in all kinds of different ways. So besides the business, all the nonprofits, and you'll see if anyone goes on to my site at grampsjeffrey.com, that's Gramps, Jeffrey.com, or I don't want to turn 3.com. You'll see, you'll start to see a bunch of blogs and so forth geared towards the nonprofits and towards what grandparents really need to do.
That's great. I love it. And, I've tried to do that. And with the, being in school, I'm obligated to write. And so I'm keeping everything that I do. And I'm hoping that I get to that point where I can look back on the things that I've produced, whether they be actual papers or just notes, similar. That's what journaling is, right? It's just notes. It's your thoughts of the day. It's your emotions on paper. To look back and hopefully that'll inspire me and provide me everything that I need. I think one of the things that I run into, and I was just struggling with this last night as I was finishing up a short paper for the current course, is I find myself putting information on and I'm just all over the place. And it's just because I'm a big picture person. I'm a vision type person. But when you put me in the present moment, sometimes I just get lost in the details. And so trying to condense the information or to make it more linear, instead of, I can't write about three things. This is a very detailed paper of one specific thing. And I need to make sure that I'm not going off on tangents. So that's just how my brain works. So I'm trying to, not necessarily swim against the current, but I'm trying to figure out ways that I can use what I'm good at to accomplish what I need to accomplish and not necessarily, fight against it. So, talking to people like you, this is great, with the podcast. Again, this is not me standing up on a mountain telling everybody how to be a great stepdad. This is me trying to figure it out as I do it. And that's why these conversations are so great. Your perspective and your experiences and, the things that you've put on paper, that it's just the conversation, right? The networking, the interaction with people. That's the great thing about doing what I do as a podcaster and what you do as a writer and, a network and being a business person, you have to be a great networker. So what are some of the things that you would, so we, the audience is specifically stepdads, but I know there's a few people beyond that listen, but knowing who the audience is primarily, what kind of message would you want them to take away from this conversation?
Much like what you were talking about, one of my favorite expressions is dance like no one's watching. Okay? That's what you need to do as a dad and a stepdad. You don't have to perform for anybody else but yourself. Okay. And, when you take that and think about it, how has my influence of a little kid, what can I do to add value to their life? What can I be that's different than what their mom says? And so that's what a dad has to do, is you're going to add different kinds of value. And, if it's a male child, he's going to look up to you and because he's going to grow up very similar to you. And it's a female child, that she's going to say, my daddy is my hero, and that's the guy I want to make sure I find. So, so just dance like nobody's watching.
Yeah. And I put something out we have that Champion Stepdad Facebook group. It's a private group that, you have to request to join. I know you and I are both struggling right now. You just got over being sick. I'm still trying to get over being whatever it was that I've had for the last couple of weeks. We are just a mess. I just wanted to give you a second to clear, because I know sometimes that's tough. So we have, and I don't remember where I was going with it, but the idea of having a community where you can feel safe. Safe meaning I can say what I need to say. Nobody's going to call me out for being stupid. Nobody's going to talk about, pride and, oh, you got to be a real man. No, that's garbage. Having a safe space where we can have the conversations we need to have. And one of the things I posted up recently that had some pretty good engagement within this group was, why is it that guys are so hesitant to come out and have the conversations that they need to have? Or why is it that guys are so willing to, even when they realize that they're in a rut, they're okay remaining in that rut rather than reaching out for help and doing the things that they need to do. What's your response to that kind of question?
Stepdads really take a special role in children's lives. You'll never replace the father. Okay, it is who it is, but you can become the mentor, and that's what stepdads need to think through. Is they need the mentor. They need to be the person who teaches the child some of the day in, day out things, because you're around them all the time, that they need to know. So that's what my advice would be: is you're a mentor. You're never going to be the dad. You're going to be the mentor. And over time, the kids really do appreciate that.
Yeah, they do. And I've seen that a lot, both in my older stepson and then now my younger ones, is their ability to connect with me, or their willingness to connect with me, is usually dependent upon my ability to be the person that's supportive, rather than being, the authoritarian, or, to be whatever they need me to be. The more I can meet them at their level, and not only their developmental level, but also their interest level, and specific things that they're interested in, or things that I can help them learn that are within their area of interest, is, that it comes down to me. I have to do the things necessary to connect with them. I can't expect them to come to me if I'm not going to create that safe, welcoming, empathetic environment. So yeah, those are great final thoughts. I really appreciate your time. Marc Joseph, also known as Gramps Jeffrey, has the book, I Don't Want to Turn 3. Wanted to make sure I read that right. And I will make sure that I put, so we got grampsjeffrey.com. I've got, you sent me a whole bunch of great information. I will make sure that I put, as condensed as, with as much space that I have, I'll put the most important things in there, so that people know where to find you, both you and your book. Primarily I Don't Want to Turn 3, but also the other one. If people are interested in your business mentorship, I think that's a great addition to the conversation, because, when we talk about athletes, which is where a lot of my specialty lies, is, if you want to seek optimal performance, everything is a performance issue. And I think that goes along well with, stepdads and dads and husbands, is you can't expect to be great in one area if you're ignoring or you're delinquent in another area. So some of these things, somebody might connect with you better with the one than the other, but I'll make sure that I post them back, both on the show notes. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.